Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Steve Furos with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, I'm super excited. We've got Dan French on the show. So Dan's had a direct hand and played a significant role to build a multifamily residential real estate investment company with $2 billion in assets under management, over 500 teammates, and that actively manages over 15,000 units. Dan's based out of Austin, Texas, close to my hometown of San Antonio. So I'm sure even just talking to him, I'm already smelling barbecue and tasting some Mexican food. But Dan, he's a certified property manager. He's got a BA from Burlington University and an MPA from Rockefeller College of Public Affairs and Policy. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show.
Steve, thanks for having me on. Next time you're in Austin, let's have barbecue together. We'll go to Franklin.
Oh man. Yeah. I was going to say, I can taste Franklin's. I can taste Blacks. Oh man. My mouth is watering already.
Oh, the Hawaiian food is pretty wonderful as well. So yeah,
we'll trade. We'll trade.
That.
Well, right on. Well, hey, I'm glad that you're taking some time out of your day to pop on, share with us, to have a conversation here, kind of share with the listeners as well. For those of our listeners that may not be familiar with you, kind of your backstory, give us some insight. Did you come from a generation of property managers and people in real estate and whatnot? Or was this like, hey, now I'm going to try out this real estate thing and see what it's all about? Fill us in.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Actually, the total opposite, by the way. So I grew up from like a working class family. So I grew up in the Bronx, New York, and that was where I was raised only till I was 7 years old though. So my folks moved us upstate a little bit. So that's still in like suburban New York City metro area. You can get to the city on a train, but a much more peaceful way to live. And in the 80s, when I was growing up, New York City was not a good place to send your kids to public school. So it was the American dream. I'm very grateful to my parents for making a lot of sacrifices to enable us to have like a better life there. And that's what everyone wants for their kids. It's like live better than we had it. So they definitely achieved that. But growing up, I saw my dad was a working class guy. He was a painter and a union painter. And so he painted hospital rooms. That was a perpetual job in New York City. You always had a hospital room to paint. So I didn't really see entrepreneurship growing up, but I did get great values and the work ethic of work hard and delay the marshmallow and something good will happen later. So I kind of saw them do that. And much later on, I decided to go into real estate. I think it was already somewhere in my heart as getting right out of college, my undergrad degree, just living in an apartment, not receiving good service, seeing how like sort of dilapidated some of the buildings have become. Like, man, there's someone out there who's going to do this better. And why can't that be me someday? Why can't I own this building that I live in? And why am I paying rent to some absentee landlord who's doing a terrible job? So that was in my heart somewhere. But then my business partner, who I've been in partnership with for 20 years now, he approached me, and I'm so blessed that he did. So him and his brother, I basically became their second partner. So a partnership of three. We started buying small deals together, 4-unit buildings and the like. And then we became off to the races. And this is like 04, 05 as the beginning.
Okay.
That's how it started.
So this is right before GFC and right before walking into a buzzsaw there. So where were you guys doing deals to start? Because obviously you're in New York as a kid, but then you transitioned, went to school. Where were you at this point? Where were you guys buying?
It was New York. It was upstate New York. And that's one of the things I learned really, really deeply in my gut. Now it's like, really pick your market. So you have to be in a dynamic, growing market that has economic growth. It's that the future is really bright and really like, place your bet there, because you can't fight the market at some level. You can be the best operator, the best investment mind of your generation or what have you. But if you run up against market forces, typically you're the loser. You're not going to win.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. That's one of those things. It can definitely, as incredible tailwinds, it can propel you to great success. Like, so even somebody who's not a great operator or, doesn't necessarily have the skills can still be saved by, let's say, the market. We don't have control over that. But just to your point exactly, like, hey, you could be the best one in the world and you're still going to be facing an uphill battle, but the market's against you, working against you. So, okay. So you guys are investing at that point in New York. And then so any kind of learned lessons once GFC rolled around, like obviously I can hear it. So like I can hear that would have at least changed your investment strategy. Like, okay, you don't learn about like, let's say markets and whatnot without maybe facing some challenges, I guess, in that arena.
Well, certainly pick your market, but also, yeah, as you alluded to, and smart because you went through it as well. It seemed like from our before the show, we kind of talked a little bit. You've been in the game for a real long time as well, and yeah, we went from being like really smart and for a couple of years feeling like we're on top of the world to very quickly in '08 when the meltdown was occurring, it hit us like really fast. So we became like the
Mm,
poster child for all the things that you probably that would include not having a lot of capital reserves, right? And way too much debt. So we over levered our deals. And then really not having that operating experience to kind of like hunker down and weather the storm. So that in turn became a perfect storm. Like if
mm,
you have those three strikes against you, your back is really up against the wall and your options are extremely limited. So luckily we were also in a time when if you had the grit to work things out
mhm.
and remain in the game, you could do that. You can kind of work things out with the banks, many of whom had just gone out of business. They blew up and someone had purchased their assets for 10 cents on the dollar. So now before you know it, I'm on the phone for 5 hours a day trying to see who owns my note. And that's how bizarre things were back then. But these things somewhere in your gut, they become seared in your consciousness and your gut instincts and hopefully become a lot better over time as you make those
Yeah.
mistakes.
No, 100%. And just like you said, like you already picked up through that, like, hey, what can we dissect this kind of after the fact? Like, of course, it's never fun going through it and you're just trying to scramble. And I get it. I mean, I was there during that time also, but it kind of, as we talked about on this kind of off the show here, it's like, well, that's the time that you kind of pick up different skill sets. Like you can improve like, okay, like, hey, I'm not doing that again. We need to do more of this. Like you start adding kind of tools to the tool belt to be able to service the clients better, to service our investors, just to be a better operator. So, okay. So post transition here, you guys are obviously making it work. You're still working with the lenders at that point. Like how many units were you guys up to, or was it just still kind of a smaller operation at that point? Or
It was small. I mean, back then it felt big to me at different times. I think it was about 100 units total between this little small partnership. And again, when you're growing up, kind of middle working class, like that sounds like a lot.
yeah,
Like by the times you're like, wow, I'm like a mogul now. And you're just trying to do the best you can. And
yeah,
so that early stuff didn't really do much for us. We
mm,
worked all those years and a lot of sweat equity that just kind of evaporated. We paid our investors back that was a key thing, but we didn't make any money. So, but the happier part becomes in the middle. It was like of the story is 2011 when I joined my partner full time at that point, late 2011. He had founded the company and that company purchased $2 billion of total asset value and bet on great markets. That was Florida to start with, and then very quickly went to Texas. So almost all of our 17,000 apartments that we purchased were in those two states. There was a couple one-offs in also good states like Denver and Phoenix and Idaho, but really we concentrated our bet in Florida and Texas. We bought between 2011 and 2019.
mm,
And so we executed well. So I think we did a really good job for our shareholders and it was a really fun ride as well for our teammates to see so many people grow inside that business.
yeah. No, that's awesome. And even just in that, like even in you sharing that, like that's a learned lesson because we would have just came through the GFC, right? Just came through like super economic, like volatile economic times or a lot of uncertainty,
Yeah.
but having the wherewithal to say, okay, all right, what do we know? Like we have certain tools, this stuff still works. It may just not work in this may not be the best place, like where we're currently investing. Let's go look, right? Let's look outside of our own backyard, go do some evaluation. Let's look at the kind of the macroeconomic factors, like what's happening, right? Because there's
Yeah.
still everybody talks about, if you listen to the news, it's like, oh, real estate, like the industry is crashing. And it's like, well, there's no one market. Like real estate's hyper local. There's something good happening somewhere. So it's like,
Of
it,
course. Yeah.
it behooves us as investors, as operators, like, okay, well, we need to find that somewhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for sure.
you guys did the smart thing and we were buying in a couple of amazing places. And that's great too, because that was an awesome time to buy. I mean, it's still been an awesome time to buy, but man, that was to acquire a ton of units during that period. I mean, my goodness, that must have done exceedingly well for you guys.
Yeah.
So that's great.
It was a fun ride. And yeah, to your point about things being so localized, so true. Right. I mean, everyone knows this somewhere because their experience tells them if they've ever traveled, right? Things they can be very different in
Mm,
during the same time frame. So I remember, as an example, after the GFC, Florida's meltdown was way worse than Texas, because Texas concurrently with the meltdown, like the shale boom or
mm,
fracking really changed the economy of Texas. And a lot of people remained employed in that state. That state just raged. And it's a quiet thing, but people forget the US is now the biggest producer of oil. It's fascinating. And then before then it was like, man, we're gonna like lose all of our security, and it was a major concern about the Middle East having all this power, which is probably still a valid concern, but it's been eased because Texas kind of showed the way. All this
yeah.
innovation in the space of getting at the oil underground made the Texas economy like be very resilient during 2008, 9, 10 in a way that Florida didn't really experience. Florida had a more of a dramatic meltdown, and a lot of their properties there were just completely left for dead. Owners didn't care. They were tossing keys back to the banks. So we did a lot of that hard stuff as well. We've done traditional value add, everything's operating, it's fine. But we did like the hairy, disgusting projects too, and took them back to life,
Yeah.
which is very rewarding, because then you see a neighborhood that was blighted and now it's becoming vibrant again,
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
that's awesome. And that's awesome. And we have a lot of the listeners on the show, they might have exposure to multifamily, but most are just residential, single family, just kind of
Mhm.
investors. And it's like, well, it's always exciting to see like, okay, hey, we did a flip and you got to take what was a blight to the street and turn it into a brand new, amazing house that a new family is going to come in and live to.
Yeah.
That's the awesome thing is through, let's say, these apartment buildings, multifamily, much larger footprint. So it has the opportunity. This is always the benefit of commercial assets, multifamily assets. You have the benefit of scale. And so instead of it being just that one property, like the one family that you can have an impact on, hey, if you're able to turn around a whole complex, I mean, you're potentially talking about hundreds and hundreds of families. Like you're
Right.
really turned around a space and okay, hey, we went after a few assets there, and it really has an opportunity. And I don't think people talk about that enough, right? It's like, well, people listening to this show are probably going to be, they'll be okay with, of course, they're going to be pro investing in real estate, but we don't always have the best wrap up, whatever. But guys, we have a real opportunity to make changes in your local community. Like, don't forget that. And that's exactly what Dan's talking about. It is really rewarding when you do get a chance to be a direct hand in that, put in the work, put in the effort to really change kind of the trajectory and really the living conditions, I think, for a lot of these people, because I've seen some pretty gnarly, just as I can imagine you have, like you walk into an
Oh yeah.
acquisition and you're just like, oh man, how do you guys live here? Like we got to change this. But there's value that you can do there, of course, but the change comes when it's like, oh man, I knew what this place used to look like, and now it looks like this.
Yeah. That's so true. I'm so grateful that you're bringing this into it, because I think for a lot of people, it's a mental exercise or a financial play strictly for them. And I think that's missing the joy of what we can do in real estate, because it is a real world asset. It does exist here in the real world. It's people actually are behind the doors, and they're the ones, if it's residential that you're in, they're the ones like keeping food on your table, and
Mhm.
making, a good return for your investors. So you want to create more community for them. You want it to be a place where they're proud. They're proud of, it's well maintained. They're safe, and you have huge impact. And guess what? The people that act that way in a missionary style, they do better in business. They get better returns because
Yeah.
their team is more motivated. Their hearts are in the right place. They work harder, and they're about something bigger.
Well, and that almost brings it back kind of full circle to what you were sharing with me earlier, like when you were growing up. It's like, well, hey, if I had somebody who cared about this place and the living condition of the people living in the unit, me, like, do they care about that at all? Or are they just, no, they're just looking to collect a check and yeah, that doesn't really matter the living condition of, let's say, the residents or the space. It's
Right.
like, no, you can actually have a pretty significant impact and just care a little bit. I mean, it doesn't take much, but hey, happy residents are going to stay longer. That helps to reduce turmoil. Like, I think people kind of don't see that often enough. They don't kind of put that two and two, like, oh, I'm an investor. Cool. Yeah. We're always going to chase the highest dollar. Yeah, I get it. But guess what? When you have vacancy, and you have a unit turn, and you're out that cash for a while. So if you're not doing your value add,
Yeah.
sometimes it's going to be more beneficial to keep them in there. We do slower rate rent or rent increases. You can still improve things, but it's like, don't forget that. Don't forget the human component. Right?
So true. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Well, what kind of changes too? Like obviously you guys, you're buying during the right times. You bought in the right markets for one. I was just kind of like to highlight that too, just for our listeners, for those of you guys that may be listening and like, oh, yeah, Steve, my market is not a great market to be in. The local economy has really slowed down. A lot of businesses shut down. I don't think it's a great place for me to put my money. I don't feel comfortable with that. Okay, then great. Look for a market that do what Dan did, do what I did, right? Like go look at markets away from wherever maybe your home market is. And there's going to be a fear factor there, no doubt. But you're going to have to look at, hey, what are the economic drivers that are happening around the country, right? Like for, as Dan mentioned earlier, or Texas. Okay, you got a huge energy boom going. Okay, well, great. Guess what? There's jobs there. If there's businesses flowing into that market, those people need a place to stay. If dollars
Yeah.
are flowing, I want to be in that spot. So you're going to have to do a little bit more research, a little bit more homework, maybe make some connections, go take a trip down to whatever market that you're in, or maybe find another investor or somebody who's in that market and start making connections. And don't be afraid to go outside of your home market, your backyard.
Yeah.
I would,
100%. I mean, I love it, Steven. It's like you have to be bold with your life. And oftentimes it's so easy to get trapped in where you maybe grew up there. And you have reasons for this, right? Your family's there,
Mhm.
you have kids and the caretakers, they're helping you take care of your kids. I understand all that. But one of the best things you can do is like put yourself in a place where there's massive opportunity. You can't help but collide with like these different opportunities. And guess what? It's actually going to be better for your kids too over the long term
Yeah.
because having them in a dynamic economic climate overall means like things are just working better in the local area. Like people are just making more moves. There's less vice problems where people are like unemployed or underemployed and maybe crime goes up in that area. So go to areas where there's opportunity because so many good things are following from that. And being in that city as they grow up in that city, then they're in turn going to have better access to opportunities. So it has a huge impact. I was talking to our talent team on the real estate property management side. One of the things they are struggling with the most, and you're seeing this too, maintenance people. So just talk about like blue collar type folks. My dad was one of them. If you move from a place that's like deteriorating economically and you go to a place like Austin, all you have to do is raise your hand. If you have any kind of skills, raise your hand. You're about to get hired in a New York minute. So I don't know. I just, anyway, be bold.
Yeah, I was going to say like especially like in a time like now, like, or any of these places where you do have economic activity going on, like, there's opportunity everywhere. And I think it's hard for people to see
Yes.
that whenever, hey, you're in a downstate. It's difficult to kind of, I think, process through some of that. But some of those that kind of, some of us who maybe have even just having an eye, like if you've been through some struggles and you kind of have learned some new skills and picked up some different things, like there's opportunity everywhere. There really is. So it's just a matter of like, okay, like taking off those blinders a little bit, pulling them back. Okay, what can I do? And maybe that's not the thing that you're going to be doing forever, but all right, like let's transition. Maybe I can pick up a new skill set and start
Yeah.
making transitions and do what you got to do. Like, just like you said, it's a short-term sacrifice for eventually it's potentially a generational impact. Like you said, like,
Yeah.
okay, hey, don't quote unquote sacrifice for your kids and stay just in the place where everybody's struggling. Hey, you know what? You might need to
Right.
pick up and move, right? Or maybe not in that position, but it's like, okay, well, hey, look, I'm just going to take my dollars and go invest out of state. All right, we'll go do that too.
Right.
Like that's great too. Like we know a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
We experience that a lot here in Hawaii because this is not the best place for me in my mind. Like you're not getting the best returns here. We just don't have the growth and economic diversity and whatnot. So, okay, well, that's fine. Like I'm going to go look and evaluate different markets. And our team has done that to go and invest in just like how you guys did. All right, well, hey, Texas, Florida, Sun Belt, hey, there's some good stuff happening in some of these places that are not my home state. If your state's not working, guys, guess what? There's 49 other ones
Yeah.
you can take your
Yeah.
pick.
Totally. And guess what? And 9 of them have no state income tax.
Yes.
And I've lived in 2 of them. So Florida, which just kind of feels good. I also want to highlight, Steve, the kind of the opposite thing happens too, like where people, they always think there's something away from where they are that's more beneficial or
Mm,
more opportunity somewhere else. So an example is the flip side of that talk track would be, oh, I'm in Austin, but now I already missed this ride. Like I should have been here 13 years ago or 15 years ago. Like there's now it's all picked over and I can't do anything. And that's just not right because it's had an incredible 20-year wave, even call it like 40-year wave. But that's not to say that the next 20 years isn't going to be as dynamic and it could possibly be that it'll be more dynamic because
Mhm.
some things are spinning on itself now. It's turning it from a state capital and a university town into a broadly crazy dynamic manufacturing, defense. It's always been a real estate town now for a while, but all these different jobs, and it's an extremely diverse place. Tech, obviously, we have all
Mhm.
this secondary tech stuff that's happening, and some homegrown tech that's really big on itself. So this whole a lot of money moving here. Anyway, so this could be that the next 20 years was better than the last 20. But if you don't get around that mental block and pick your spot well, of course, but like you're going to be always thinking something's better.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, but again, this is doing your homework. Like,
Mm.
I would encourage anybody, like speaking specifically on Texas, and again, like I'm biased. We invest in Texas. I grew up there, so very familiar with the areas we're talking about. But for those of you guys that may not be, go pull up population projection out through 2050 for
Mhm.
I-35 corridor for Texas as a whole, and you should be. If that doesn't excite you, or you don't see some opportunity there, then I don't know what to tell you. So
Totally. Yeah.
I want to switch a little bit back to kind of operations real quick and just kind of your glean from your experience having to managing and, operating with so many units. Obviously the last few years has been kind of a different, we've had to switch gears a bit in terms of how we're projecting and rate increase and all that kind of stuff. Interest rates have significantly gone up. Insurance has been insane.
Yep.
What were some ways that you guys were doing to maybe combat some of that? Or was it just like, no, well, we were just going into it with more conservative underwriting? Like, what were you guys doing to help to try and mitigate some of that or just really just deal with it?
Yeah, it's a complicated answer because the company that was built in 2011, in 2019, it sold 1.5 billion of
Mhm.
its assets over a couple of years. Like it was deal by deal. So that vertically integrated team kind of sized down in a big way. We kind of harvested the gains that we had created and did a good job for investors. And then we pivoted our property management business to become a third party provider, which
Mm,
is a really a completely different business. And it I think I was even a little bit caught off guard with how much of a pivot we had undertaken. And
mm,
now that's all behind us. And now we're growing. That team is growing like crazy. It's doing a really good job. But ResProp, as a third party provider, really kind of has to be in incredible sync with the owner group that they're managing for. So a lot of times the ownership group didn't underwrite an insurance increase that they got hit with. So we try to mitigate that by having ResProp tries to mitigate it by having a master policy to drive down costs using scale power.
mhm,
So
mhm,
basically, like just paying attention to every dollar. It matters in every market and up market, and down market, whatever. But when people are more cash strained, they're going to go to groups like ResProp that are thinking like owners. And the reason why they do that is because they came from a group that was an owner operator. So it's in their DNA. And you got to think like an owner. Right? Every single dollar counts. Every single lease is important because if you leave money on the table, it's going to have a cascading effect down through the years, through your whole period. So that's broad topics, but we can double click if you'd like.
Yeah, no, 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 no. I actually think it's important. I think it's important always and even dealing with any of the different service providers that we've used like over the years, but specifically, let's say property management, third party property management. I think that's huge. Like having management or having like providers that are active, that are owners, it really gives you a different perspective because like you
Yeah.
said, I've seen many third party property management companies and they get owners and investors get really frustrated because it's like, well, hey man, like you guys are, yeah, I see you have thousands and thousands of units, but we get lost in the shuffle. Like the owners get lost in the shuffle, right? And it's like, well, people get comfortable and they maybe don't manage as closely as they should. But like how you're saying, like even just having, and you don't even need to be a big manager, but even just having that viewpoint of like, well, hey, I, I'm I'm concerned about this for you, right? To the benefit of the owners. And you
Right.
should want to do that anyways. Like if we're giving high level service, if we're caring for those dollars, caring for these people's property as our own, you're always going to perform better. Ultimately, that's going to benefit the company. But at the end of the day, we're trying to solve for happy residents. And hey, maybe the ownership team didn't underwrite properly. Okay, well, hey, now we're having to play catch up a little bit. Okay, that's okay. We have some strategies we can implement to help kind of navigate this with you guys. But having the mindset of like, well, I understand what it's like to be in your seat. I've been an owner. I am an
Yeah.
owner, that kind of deal. I think that's huge. And I don't think there's enough people in the industry that are like, hey, well, yeah, I'll sell it to you. Yeah, I'll manage it for you. Oh, but do you own property? Well, no, I don't. I actually don't invest. Right. I always think that's actually
Right.
kind of a key question to ask a lot of people that are operators, or that
Yeah.
are provide some kind of service. I think it's really valuable.
Yeah. Exactly. I do think during tougher times, you have to get even scrappier.
Mhm.
And I like this concept of, I heard the phrase total asset monetization the other day. I like that a lot. It's like every piece of your property needs to be maximized. And it takes a very skilled operator to be able to think through this or help you get in touch with the right groups to do that. So back in the day, it was like laundry income. Now a lot of new deals, they don't have a laundry center anymore, but like that would be an example. Or if you have carports and full, all right, well, total asset monetization. Why don't we think about a CapEx project to create more carports? All kinds of stuff, like even if you have extra storage units that you can't sell to your own property, there's a group you can go to and say, hey, can we put this on your platform? And they're going to take a little piece of that, but who cares? Like as an owner, you want that $50. Or you'll give up $20 maybe or whatever it is because you want that 50. It's just money sitting there. If you have a group that's thinking that switched on to think about all that stuff for you, you're like, wow, I don't need to push the PM team. Like they're pushing me.
Yeah, no, that's
That's a
actually
good
really
feeling.
good. Yeah, and it is yeah, that is actually really good. Like to look at each component and just kind of break it down, right? It's not so much that you're thinking outside of the box, although yeah, it's more just like thinking practically. It's like sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
no, that's actually really good. I like that.
Yeah, there's so many things out there, and maybe we're even in danger of nickel and diming people, so we have to be careful about that because
Sure.
there is a breaking point. But I was doing a site visit the other day and reviewing some stuff, and they were showing me their towing, or there's an app to, oh, I'm sorry, for parking. So
Mm.
people
I was like,
are not
"Dang."
on,
Yeah.
yeah, are not on the lease. Like they can buy a day pass now if you're not on the lease. So again, maybe so in a particular neighborhood where you don't want folks that are just coming in and out being transient, it's also a
Right.
security thing. So anyway, these are things that are like, if you don't have someone really on top of their game or a team that has like a platform that thinks about this stuff, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, and we could have another whole podcast, I'm sure, another whole recording, just sitting down and kind of thinking about these different ideas and
Yeah.
whatnot. So yeah, no, that's a super fascinating topic. Well, this is the point of our show where we kind of transition. We're going to switch gears here, where we transition to what we call our fire round, just a little more brief kind of Q&A, a little bit, some of it a little bit more fun,
Okay.
a little bit more rapid fire. Is that something you're up for?
I'm up for it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, first question. So what is your best book recommendation for those of us in real estate? Common answer is, of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Purple Bible. But do you have a good book recommendation that your go-to as, hey, I want to get into real estate. Okay, perfect. Hey, you need to read this, or I want to start a business. Okay, cool. Like here,
Yeah.
take this. This is the best that I always recommend.
I love the Buffett shareholder letters, and it's not
Mm,
something most people would mention, but like just go through all of them. It takes a lot of discipline actually to like go through 50 plus years, but his investment thinking, his long-term mindset, the way he deals with emotion and tries to just look at business from a fundamental standpoint, like value investing. That's really
mm,
a perfect corollary to how you should think about real estate. Also being a contrarian, if you're doing every single thing
sure.
that other people are doing, well, how do you have real alpha in your
Yeah.
space? It's hard. You're just following the herd. So those principles are like timeless. They're incredible. It's fun to see him come in and out of businesses. Some of them he's owned forever, like Geico. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't have the net worth that he does without getting
Yeah,
a few
that's the
things
reason.
right. So
Yeah, that's the reason why he's like one of the richest people on the planet. Yeah.
right, right on. All right. Next question. What would you consider your superpower to be?
I think assembling teams and then motivating them, serving them, supporting them, achieving with them. So it's probably something around like taking on a lot of leadership over my time, just like building that muscle. I think there's something there.
Awesome. All right. Next question. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career thus far?
Pick the right partners, really determine if you're in business with someone, or even if you join something, like really, I see so many people make a mistake because their values don't align with the business values. And then you look at their career and they've been 3 places in 5 years. You're like, oh, wow, was it you, or was it, you don't know how to pick something that aligns with you? So I would say like pick your partner. And that includes like, if you're joining a business, be very studious about like, what are you buying into?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's valuable life advice. Like, pick the right partner, pick the right friends, pick the right spouse.
Yeah, yeah. Get married to the right person. Yeah.
Yes. All right. And then for next question, if you're a busy working professional, somebody's trying to work towards financial freedom, what advice would you have for them?
Is it someone who wants to get involved in real estate?
I mean, just in general. I mean, it could
Oh,
be real estate if you want to keep it focused, but
I would say be prepared to delay the marshmallow. Nothing you do is going to be getting you immediately rich. Most things, maybe one out of like 1,000 or 10,000, but you need to be prepared that it's going to take you years and years. But then start now, like start listening to great podcasts like you have, Steve. Back in the day, 20 years ago when we started, it was a lot harder to find good material. And now it's like you get drowned in good material. So you got to actually be selective on what you even put in your ears or put in your mind. But get started. That's one thing, because you are going to have to delay. So the time to start is right now. And getting started
yeah,
could just be education. It doesn't mean go buy a deal. It means like educate yourself. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then even back to your prior point, right? It's like educate yourself, pick the right partner. So there's steps to this, but get moving, right? Like
right.
start taking action. Don't get lost in your own analysis paralysis, right?
Yeah.
And Dan has mentioned the marshmallow test several times. So if you guys aren't familiar with that, just go look it up, right? It's a marshmallow test. It has to do with kids, marshmallows. Do the test with your own kids. You'll love it. Like it's cool.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe
Yeah.
don't do it. I
Yeah.
don't know. All right. Well, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I give out my cell phone on podcasts. So just hit me up, text me 845-629-1808. Maybe you can add that in your notes, but I'm
Yeah.
always out to trade ideas and see if I could be helpful to people. But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn too. So Daniel French, check me out on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to find out there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you hopping on with me and kind of sharing your wisdom, your years of experience. I enjoyed our conversation and I know the listeners did too, but I really appreciate you hopping on. I have to see you the next time you're out in Hawaii. Make sure that you hit me
Yeah.
up and we'll connect. But go out, enjoy a wonderful Austin afternoon. I don't know if it's cooling off yet by this time of year, but
Right. No, not yet. Yeah.
but go enjoy the day. Go take some action. We'll talk to you soon. Aloha.
Bye. Peace, man. Aloha.
Excellent conversation with Dan French. He has got a ton of experience on the management side, operations, investing. Again, you wear different hats when you're kind of walking through the space. And even though they had been doing a management company, you handle all kind of operations and all that kind of stuff. I've always thought it's super, super important. And you're able to look at things with a different lens when you've also been an owner, because you look at things just differently. You just do. And this goes for any facet, whether this be insurance, lending, management, operations. Again, you're just going to look at things differently when you are also an owner, not necessarily just within that portfolio, but hey, I want to work with a fellow investor because you understand, hey, my money is on the line, the time, the money, the resources, all of that kind of stuff. So I always think that that's hugely valuable to have somebody that whoever it is that you're working with has some experience in the business. So I think that's cool and great conversation, great guy. So we'll look forward to maybe having Dan back on the show here in the future. Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the show. And if so, I would love it if you share the episode, if you share the podcast in general. If you guys are finding value, we'd love a 5-star review. We want to hear your feedback. And if you didn't love it, that's totally fine too. But let us know why, right? Let us know how we could improve. We'd love to be able to make the show better for you guys, get better guests on. and continue to bring out great content for you guys. If you guys are local, so if you're listening and you're here in Hawaii or you're going to be visiting Hawaii, make sure that you connect with our group, Multifamily and More, Honolulu Multifamily and More. So you can check us out on meetup.com. You can check us out on Facebook, or just go to tricityequity.com. You can learn more about our company and our group, but we'd love to be able to meet you, shake a hand, and key you in on the different things that we've got going on, and maybe potentially ways that we can help you in your investing journey. But that's going to be it for today, guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Go out, take some action, fail forward, and we'll see you in the next one. Aloha.